The Battle of Tora Bora was a military engagement that took place in the cave complex of Tora Bora, Eastern Afghanistan, from December 6 to 17, 2001, during the opening stages of the United States invasion of Afghanistan. It was launched by the United States and its allies with the objective to capture or kill Osama bin Laden, the leader of the militant Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda and bin Laden were suspected of being responsible for the September 11th attacks 3 months prior. The code name for the operation was Jawbreaker. But to understand the history of Jawbreaker, let's go back to the moments after the September 11th attacks. After the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, counterterrorism staff reduced in order to evacuate CIA Langley. The Counterterrorism Center obtained passenger lists from the planes that had been turned into weapons that morning. A CTC analyst raced over to the printing plant from which most CIA staff had been evacuated and pointed out the names Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, who had been looking for the last few weeks by not just the CIA, but also the FBI. However, the CIA knew about these two men and never notified the FBI or the State Department 16 months prior to the attacks, while they were living inside the United States. This was the first absolute proof that the attacks were an Al Qaeda plot. The Counterterrorism Center had first come across the names in connection with the potential terrorist activity in the winter of 1999-2000. However, this information was never shared, and the CIA was never held responsible for not sharing the information and preventing the attacks. The CIA's planning efforts had put them in a better position to respond after the attacks. As George Tenet, the CIA director, put it, quote, "How could an intelligence community without a strategic plan tell the President of the United States just 4 days after the 9/11 attacks how to attack the Afghan sanctuary and operate against Al Qaeda in 92 countries around the world?" End quote. This was at a war council, a restricted group of the National Security Council, chained by President Bush at Camp David on September 15, 2001. Black was also present. Tenet proposed first to send CIA teams into Afghanistan to collect intelligence and mount covert operations. The teams would act jointly with military special operation units. President Bush later praised the proposal, saying it had been a turning point in his thinking. According to Bob Woodward's Bush at War, he mentions two meetings at which Black was present while implementing this plan with memorable Blackisms. In a September 13th meeting with Bush, Black said, quote, "Now he noted the desire to end and capture Al Qaeda and render them to law enforcement so they could be brought to justice. With regret, however, he had learned that Al Qaeda do not surrender. They do not negotiate. The great martyred Northern Alliance leader Ahmad Shah Massoud had once told Black, 'We've been fighting these guys for years, and I never captured one of these bastards.' The reason was that any time one of their units was overrun, they bunched together and detonated a hand grenade. So the task would be killing Al Qaeda," Black said. "When we're through with them, they will have flies walking across their eyeballs," he said. It was an image of death that left a lasting impression on a number of war cabinet ministers. Black became known in Bush's inner circle as the flies on the eyeballs guy. Black's enthusiasm was infectious. Colin Powell, for one, saw that Bush was tired of the rhetoric. The president wanted to kill somebody, end quote. The CIA geared to take the lead in the attack on Al Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan. The Northern Afghanistan liaison team was led by Gary Schroen, a former CIA field officer who was tasked to head the CIA incursion. He entered the country once more on September 26, 2001. A new branch was added to the CTC Special Operations, or CTCSO. Hank Crumpton, the former head of CTC Operations, was recalled to head it. Black had told him, "Your mission is to find Al Qaeda, engage it, and destroy it. On December 3rd, 2001, a group of 20 U.S. CIA Nationally Clandestine Services, NCSC, Special Activities Division, and 5th Special Forces Group team members, codename Jawbreaker, were inserted by helicopter in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, to begin an operation against them. On December 5th, 2001, Afghan Northern Alliance fighters wrested control of the low ground below the mountain caves for al-Qaeda fighters. The Jawbreaker team and SF teams equipped laser designations, called in Air Force bombers to take out targets. Non-stop heavy airstrikes, including laser-guided bombs and missiles, lasted for 72 hours. The al-Qaeda fighters withdrew to higher fortified positions and dug in for the battle. Approximately a week later, 70 Special Forces operators from the Army Delta Forces A Squadron and Air Force STS, or the Special Tactics Squadron, arrived overland by vehicle to support the bombing campaign with ground forces. 2 British Special Boat Service commandos from M Squadron were embedded with A Squadron Delta, one of whom continued to work for JSOC, albeit in a different capacity. During the hours of darkness, the al-Qaeda fighters would light fires, which would reveal their specific location and aid laser-designated targeting for air-launched weapons. The Afghan Northern Alliance fighters continued a steady advance through the difficult terrain, backed by airstrikes from the U.S. and Special British forces. Facing defeat, al-Qaeda forces negotiated a truce with a local Afghan militia commander to give them time to surrender their weapons. In retrospect, however, some critics believe that the truce was a device to allow important al-Qaeda figures, including Osama bin Laden, to escape. On December 12, 2001, the fighting flared again, possibly initiated by a rearguard buying time for the main forces' escape through the White Mountains in the tribal areas of Pakistan. Tribal forces backed by U.S. Special Operations troops and air support pressed ahead against fortified al-Qaeda positions in caves and bunkers scattered throughout the mountainous region. 12 British SBS commandos and 1 British Royal Signal Specialist from 63 Signal Squadron, now known as 18 Special Regiment, accompanied the U.S. Special Operations Forces in attacking the cave complex at Tora Bora. Special Forces operators of the German KSK took part in the battle as well. They were reportedly responsible for protecting the flanks in the mountains and conducted reconnaissance missions. The U.S. focus increased on Tora Bora. Local tribal militias paid and organized by Special Forces and CIA SAD paramilitary, numbering over 2,000 strong, continued to mask for an attack as heavy bombing continued on suspected al-Qaeda positions. It was reported that U.S. forces found small outposts and a few minor training camps. Journalist Matthew Fournier covered the battle, described being allowed access to see rough bunkers deep in the mountains, which he considered remarkable. On December 17, 2001, the last cave complex had been taken out and the defenders overrun. U.S. forces continued searching the area into January, but did not find any signs of bin Laden or al-Qaeda leadership. Former CIA officer Gary Berntsen led the CIA tasked with locating bin Laden. He said that al-Qaeda detainees had reported that bin Laden escaped into Pakistan via an easterly route to Parachinar. Berntsen believed that bin Laden could have been captured during the battle if the U.S. military had committed more troops in the battle. CIA intelligence had indicated that bin Laden and the al-Qaeda leadership were trapped in the caves early in the battle, and Berntsen had wanted to send less than 1,000 American Army Rangers to eliminate them, which he believed would have ended the war on terror very quickly. However, the request was turned down by the Bush administration, which had argued that the Pakistanis would capture bin Laden if he had attempted to flee into Pakistan. In a 2005 interview, another CIA agent, Gary Schroen, concurred with Berntsen's opinion. Pentagon documents suggested bin Laden had escaped into Tora Bora. In an October 2004 opinion article in the New York Times, General Tommy Franks, who was the general commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan at the time, wrote, quote, "We don't know to this day whether Mr. bin Laden was at Tora Bora in December of 2001. Some intelligence sources said he was. Others indicated he was in Pakistan at the time. Tora Bora was teeming with Taliban and al-Qaeda operatives, but bin Laden was never within our grasp." End quote. A former Delta Force commander using the pen name Dalton Fury, who fought at Tora Bora, wrote that bin Laden escaped into Pakistan on or around December 16, 2001. Fury gives three reasons for why he believes bin Laden was able to escape. One, the U.S. mistakenly thought that Pakistan was effectively guarding the border area. Two, NATO allies refused to allow the use of airdropped Gator mines, which might have kept bin Laden and his forces inside the Tora Bora area. Three, over-reliance on native Afghan military forces as the main force deployed against bin Laden and his fighters. Fury theorized that because the battle took place over the holy religious month of Ramadan, the Afghan forces would leave the battlefield in the evenings to break fast, giving al-Qaeda a chance to regroup, reposition, or escape. In an October 2008 interview on 60 Minutes, Fury said that his Delta Force team and CIA paramilitary officers traveled to Tora Bora, and the CIA had identified bin Laden's location. Fury's team proposed an operation to attack bin Laden's suspected position from the rear over the 14,000 foot high mountains separating Tora Bora from Pakistan. He said unidentified officials at higher headquarters rejected his proposal. Fury suggested dropping Gator mines in the passes leading the way from Tora Bora, but this was also denied. Fury and his team approached the suspected position from the front and were within 2,000 meters, but withdrew because of uncertainty over the number of al-Qaeda fighters and a lack of support from allied Afghan troops. Later, Berntsen would write a book called Jawbreaker. This would lead him to believe that the capture of bin Laden was possible, but was made impossible with no help coming from either General Tommy Franks or the State Department at its highest levels. The book, Jawbreaker, The Attack on bin Laden and al-Qaeda, had acknowledged that the original manuscript, which was reviewed by the CIA, that stipulates all published works detailing an agent's career must be reviewed by the CIA's Publications Review Board. The text of the book contained redactions to indicate where material has been censored to protect information and context the CIA deemed classified. He released his first piece of fiction in August of 2008. The book, entitled Walk-Ins, tells the story of an American CIA case officer dealing with an Iranian defector from the Quds Force. However, his best book, Jawbreaker, would show that the capture of bin Laden was definitely something that should have been considered had he been suspected of being behind the September 11th attacks. In the same way that we had captured Ramzi Youssef in Pakistan for being behind the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Just in the same way, we have captured Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shib and Abu Zubaydah for their involvement in the September 11, 2001 attacks. The question is, why did we not capture Osama bin Laden in Pakistan while he was surrounded in Tora Bora, and while he was surrounded by Special Operation and JSOC in Jalalabad in a safe house? Instead, we assassinated him and threw his body into the Dead Sea. It makes you wonder that if we had brought back bin Laden, would he have contradicted the 9/11 Commission report's final narrative and the FBI's Pent Bomb report? Or would he be involved with September 11th attacks at all, at any capacity? We may never know that answer.